She showed up to a blind date dressed like a beggar, but the CEO sitting across fell in love at first. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. Emma took a deep breath, adjusting the straps of her worn-out bag as she stood outside the upscale restaurant. She had never felt more out of place. Her dress was secondhand, and the shoes she wore had seen better days. But this blind date was her last shot at something better, something that could pull her out of the rut she had been stuck in for years. She wasn't sure why she had agreed to go on this date, but it was too late now. It was already her only chance at a brighter future, and she couldn't let it slip away. The restaurant gleamed with opulence, the kind of place where the crystal chandeliers seemed to sparkle like stars. But Emma felt like a shadow in that shining world. She whispered the number to herself again. Table 7. There it was, near the back of the restaurant, with a man sitting alone, his eyes glued to his phone. He looked every bit the type of guy Emma had imagined for this kind of date. Well-groomed, dressed impeccably, and seemingly out of her league. But she had come this far, and she couldn't back down now. She approached the table, trying to keep her nerves in check. Hi, you must be Kevin. I'm Emma. Nice to meet you, she said with a shaky smile. The man looked up, his expression momentarily confused. He blinked, adjusting his posture, before he gave her a small smile. Hi, Emma, he replied, his voice low, smooth. Emma mistook his confusion for shyness, so she quickly slid into the seat across from him. I know this is awkward, blind dates are weird, right? Jenny told me you might be a little quiet, so don't worry, I can talk enough for both of us. The man paused. For a moment, clearly unsure of how to respond. He wasn't exactly shy, but something about Emma's warmth, her nervous energy, made him hesitate. He glanced at his phone, then back at her, and for reasons he couldn't quite understand, he decided to let her continue. Right? Blind dates are something else, he said with a slight smile, leaning back in his chair. Emma laughed nervously, trying to ease the tension. Tell me about yourself. I'm a waitress, not exactly glamorous, but it pays the bills. Well, most of them anyway. What do you do? She asked, taking a sip of water to steady her nerves. The man's smile widened, and for the first time, Emma felt like she was actually being listened to. I work in tech, he replied, his voice relaxed but vague. Emma smiled brightly. Tech, huh? Like coding and apps and stuff? I'm terrible with computers, she said, trying to keep the conversation flowing. He chuckled softly. Something like that, he said, his gaze softening as he studied her. She seemed so different from the women he usually met in his world. Polished, practiced, and always playing a game. But Emma? She was genuine. She was real. The conversation flowed easily after that, with Emma sharing stories about her struggles at the diner, her dreams of one day opening her own art studio, and her excitement about the little things in life. Liam found himself laughing more than he had in months, her enthusiasm contagious. He hadn't expected this, and certainly hadn't expected to enjoy her company so much. She was different, in all the right ways. Emma, on the other hand, was doing her best to keep up the conversation, trying to ignore the nagging feeling that she didn't belong in a place like this. She was a waitress from the wrong side of town. How could someone like her possibly impress someone like him? But then something strange happened. As the night wore on, and the awkwardness slowly faded away, Emma felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in a long time. She felt like she mattered, like this could actually be something. They talked about everything. Their favorite movies, their childhoods, their hopes, and their fears. It wasn't the date she had imagined. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for once, Emma didn't feel so out of place. But then, just as she was beginning to let her guard down, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Jenny. Hey Emma, where are you? I'm at table 7, looking forward to meeting you. Emma's stomach dropped. She looked up at Liam, her face turning red. You're not Kevin, are you? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam's smile faltered, but he didn't immediately correct her. He wasn't sure what had happened, but something about Emma's sincerity made him hesitate. He could have told her the truth right then, but he didn't. No, I'm not Kevin, he said softly, the words barely escaping his lips before Emma stood up abruptly. She grabbed her coat and bolted for the door, her face burning with embarrassment. Liam stood too, but he didn't follow her. He watched her go, his heart unexpectedly heavy. He had intended to correct her from the start. But now, he found himself wondering if he would ever see her again. And why? For some reason, he was hoping he would. The next morning, Emma sat on the worn couch in her small apartment, her phone still buzzing with messages from Jenny. She stared at the screen, her heart still racing from the night before. The dinner, the awkward mistake, and the way Liam had looked at her. She had never felt so humiliated in her life. She ran her fingers through her hair and sighed, trying to push the memory out of her mind. It was just a mistake, she told herself. She couldn't let it bother her, not when there was so much else she had to focus on. She had a shift to get to, bills to pay, and dreams that seemed so far out of reach. But no matter how much she tried to distract herself, Liam's face kept creeping into her thoughts. Was he really interested in her? Was it all just some game? She didn't know, but one thing was clear, she had to move on. Life had no room for distractions, especially not from someone like him. As she left her apartment and walked down the street toward the diner, her thoughts were a whirlwind. She didn't even notice the figure standing by the corner, watching her from a distance. Liam had spent the entire night thinking about Emma. He couldn't shake the way she made him feel. So real, so different from anyone he had ever met. She had no idea who he was, and somehow, that made everything feel more genuine. He could have told her the truth last night, but he didn't. Now he regretted it. He had to see her again, but he had no idea how to make it happen. His mind raced with ideas, but they all seemed too forward. He needed to give her space, but he couldn't just let her go without trying. His phone buzzed again, a reminder of all the work waiting for him. He cursed under his breath and shoved it back into his pocket. He wasn't going to let her slip away that easily. Hours later, Emma was finishing her shift at the diner when she felt her phone buzz in her pocket. She pulled it out, half expecting another message from Jenny. But this time, the number was unfamiliar. She hesitated for a moment before opening the text. "Hi Emma, it's Liam. I know this might be strange, but I'd really like to see you again. How about coffee tomorrow?" Her heart skipped a beat. Was this some kind of joke? She stared at the message, unsure of what to think. Was he just messing with her? Or did he really want to see her again? Emma quickly typed out a response, her fingers trembling. "I don't know if that's a good idea. I really messed up last night." The response came almost immediately. "You didn't mess up. I just want to get to know you better. No pressure." Emma stared at the message for a long time, her mind racing. She wanted to say yes, to give this strange connection a chance. But something held her back. Could she really trust him? Could she really trust herself to not mess this up again? The next day, she found herself walking into the small coffee shop she frequented, her heart pounding in her chest. She spotted Liam sitting by the window, a cup of coffee in front of him, his eyes scanning the room. When he saw her, his face lit up. "Emma," he said softly, standing up as she approached. "I'm so glad you came." Emma smiled nervously, sitting down across from him. She didn't know what she expected, but it wasn't this. It wasn't the way he looked at her, like she was someone special. He didn't seem to care that she was wearing her old jacket, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. All he cared about was being with her. They talked for hours. Emma told him about her childhood, her dreams, and the struggles she faced every day just to make ends meet. Liam listened intently, asking questions, showing a level of interest she had never experienced before. She felt heard. She felt understood. For the first time in a long time, Emma let herself believe that something good could happen to her. But there was still a nagging doubt in the back of her mind. Was this real? Or was she just another passing moment in Liam's life? Just as she was about to ask him, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it quickly and then back at her. "Sorry," he said, "I need to take this call. I'll be right back." Emma nodded, watching as he walked to the back of the coffee shop, phone pressed to his ear. She sat there, staring at her empty cup, wondering what it all meant. She had never been this vulnerable before, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something big was happening. When Liam returned a few minutes later, he looked different. He seemed more serious, more focused. "I'm sorry about that," he said, sitting down again. "But I've been thinking. I want to help you with your dream. I want to help you open that studio." Emma's eyes widened in shock. "What?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "You mean it?" Liam nodded. "I've seen the way you light up when you talk about it. I want to be part of that. I want to help you make it happen. Emma felt a lump form in her throat. Was this really happening? Or was she dreaming? She wasn't sure, but for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. Emma sat back in her chair, staring at Liam, her mind racing. She had never imagined a moment like this, sitting in a cozy coffee shop with a man who, only a few days ago, she had mistaken for a stranger. And now, here he was, offering to help her with her dream, the dream she had kept locked away for so long. She opened her mouth to speak, but paused, unsure of how to respond. Are you sure about this? She finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam smiled, his eyes soft and steady. I wouldn't offer if I wasn't sure, he said. I've seen the passion you have for your art. You deserve the chance to make it happen. You deserve to believe in yourself. Emma felt a lump in her throat as she tried to process his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. Not in the way that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she was worth something. Worth more than the job at the diner. More than the endless cycle of bills and debt. For the first time, she allowed herself to dream, really dream. But, why me? She asked, still feeling the weight of disbelief. I mean, you could help anyone. You have the power, the resources. Why are you helping me? Liam leaned forward, his voice earnest. Because I see something in you, Emma. I see a fire that I admire, and I want to help you feed it. I've been stuck in my own world for so long, focusing on business deals and profit margins, but meeting you, seeing your drive. It's made me realize there's more to life than just making money. There's meaning in helping others, in creating something real. Emma couldn't hold back the tears that had been threatening to spill. She wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed. I don't know what to say. This is all so overwhelming. You don't have to say anything, Liam said, his tone gentle. I just want you to know that I'm here for you. If you'll let me, I'll do everything I can to help you succeed. Emma nodded, the weight of the offer slowly sinking in. She had always believed in herself, but it had been hard to keep that belief alive when everything around her seemed to be falling apart. But now, with Liam's offer, she felt like she had a chance. She could finally breathe again. Thank you, she said, her voice shaky but sincere. I don't even know how to begin to thank you for this. Liam smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. No thanks needed. Just promise me you'll give it a shot. Promise me you'll take a leap of faith, just like I am. Emma chuckled, softly, wiping her tears away. I promise, she said, the words coming easier now. I'll take that leap. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking about her vision, her goals, and how they could make it all happen. As the sun began to set, Emma felt a weight lift off her shoulders. For the first time in years, she felt like she wasn't alone in her struggle. She had someone who believed in her, someone who wanted to see her succeed. It was the kind of support she had never known, and it filled her with a new sense of hope. But as much as Emma tried to focus on the positive, doubts still crept into her mind. Could she really do this? Could she trust Liam, someone who had come into her life so suddenly, to be there for her when things got tough? She didn't have all the answers, but she was willing to try. And that was enough for now. The next few weeks passed in a blur of meetings, planning, and hard work. Liam kept his word. He helped Emma secure the funding she needed for her art studio, and he provided mentorship, guiding her through the process of turning her dream into reality. Emma was grateful, but she also felt a sense of fear creeping in. What if she wasn't good enough? What if she failed? Every day, she pushed those thoughts aside, telling herself to stay focused. She was doing this, and there was no turning back now. One evening, as they sat in her small studio, Liam turned to her with a serious expression. How are you holding up? He asked, his voice soft. Emma paused, the weight of the question sinking in. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But I can't let that stop me. Liam nodded, his eyes full of understanding. You'll be fine. I have no doubt about that. Just remember, you're not alone in this. I'm here, every step of the way. Emma looked at him, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that everything might just be okay. The fear was still there, but it no longer had the power to hold her back. She smiled, a genuine, hopeful smile. Thank you, Liam, for everything. Liam smiled back, his expression softening. You don't have to thank me, he said, his voice warm. You've earned this. All of it. Emma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. For the first time in her life, She felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. As the weeks passed, Emma found herself in a rhythm she had never known before. With Liam's support, her dream of opening her own art studio was slowly becoming a reality. The place was small, tucked away in a quiet corner of the city, but it had everything she needed. The walls were bare, awaiting the colorful masterpieces she had yet to create. The floors creaked underfoot, but to Emma, it felt like home. Liam had arranged for the space, helped her secure a loan, and even introduced her to a few artists who had agreed to mentor her. It was everything she had dreamed of and more. But even with all the support, Emma couldn't shake the nagging feeling in the back of her mind. The fear of failure still lingered, threatening to undo everything she had worked so hard for. What if it didn't work out? What if she wasn't good enough? But she pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the vision that had kept her going all these years. One evening, as she was finishing up a painting in the studio, Liam walked in, a slight smile on his face. "How's it going?" he asked, his voice gentle. Emma wiped a few stray hairs from her face and sighed. "I'm getting there," she said, her eyes lingering on the unfinished canvas in front of her. "But it's harder than I thought. I want to make something meaningful, you know?" Liam nodded, stepping closer to her. "I think you already are," he said, his voice steady and sincere. "You're making something real, and that's more than most people ever accomplish." Emma smiled, feeling the warmth of his words seep into her chest. She had never imagined that she would find herself in this position, having a space of her own, a future she could see, and someone who believed in her. But as much as Liam had helped her, Emma couldn't help but wonder what he wanted in return. He had offered so much, and she hadn't given him anything in return. It wasn't just the money, the business advice, or the introductions. He had given her something far more valuable, his trust. The thought weighed heavily on her. As the days passed, she tried to find ways to show her gratitude. She spent more time at the studio, painting late into the night, determined to make Liam proud. But there were moments when she would glance at him, seeing the quiet concern in his eyes, and wonder if there was something more to their connection. Could she let herself believe in something beyond friendship? Could she trust him with her heart? That evening, as they sat together at a local diner, Emma finally decided to address the question that had been on her mind. "Liam," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "I don't know how to say this, but I feel like I owe you so much more than I can give." Liam looked at her, his brow furrowed in concern. "What do you mean?" "I mean, everything you've done for me," Emma said, her voice trembling slightly. "You've helped me build this studio. You've given me everything I need to succeed, and I don't know how to repay you." Liam took a deep breath, his expression softening. "Emma, you don't owe me anything," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "I've helped you because I believe in you. That's all there is to it." Emma shook her head. "But it's more than that. I feel like there's something between us, something that goes beyond just this." She paused, looking into his eyes. "Do you feel it too?" Liam's gaze softened, and for a moment, the world seemed to fade away. He reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I do," he said, his voice quiet but filled with meaning. "I've always felt it, but I didn't want to rush things. I wanted you to have your space, to focus on your dreams." Emma squeezed his hand, her heart racing. "I don't want to rush either, but I can't deny what I'm feeling. I think I'm falling for you." The words were out before she could stop them, and for a moment, she froze, unsure of how he would respond. But Liam didn't pull away. Instead, he smiled softly, his thumb brushing across her hand. "I think I've fallen for you too," he said, his voice low but steady. Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. It wasn't just about the business or the studio, or even the way Liam had helped her. It was about the connection they shared, the trust, the way he made her feel like she was enough. "So what now?" Emma asked, her voice full of uncertainty. Liam smiled, his eyes filled with a quiet confidence. "Now, we take it one step at a time. Together." As they sat there, holding hands in the dim light of the diner, Emma realized that everything she had ever wanted was right in front of her. It wasn't just about the art, the studio, or the success. It was about love, trust, and the courage to take risks. And for the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. Weeks passed, and Emma continued to pour her heart into the studio. With each new painting, She could feel herself getting closer to the artist she always wanted to be. Liam's support was unwavering, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. She had been so focused on her art, on proving herself, that she hadn't noticed how much she was starting to rely on Liam. Not just for his help, but for something deeper. The way he made her feel seen, understood, and cherished. It was more than just business now. It was something personal, something she hadn't planned for. One day, as they sat together in the studio, Emma glanced up from her canvas and caught Liam looking at her in a way that made her heart race. There was something different in his eyes, something that told her he wasn't just there as her mentor anymore. He was there as something more. "Liam," she said, setting her paintbrush down, "we need to talk." He looked at her, his brow furrowing slightly. "About what?" "About us," Emma said, her voice trembling slightly. She stood up and walked over to him, her heart pounding in her chest. "I know we've been focused on the studio, on your help, and everything else, but I can't keep pretending like I don't feel something for you." Liam was silent for a moment, his eyes searching hers. He stood up slowly, walking toward her, and then paused, a slight smile tugging at his lips. "I feel the same way," he said softly. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had been so afraid to say it out loud, so afraid of ruining what they had built. But hearing him say those words, hearing him admit that he felt the same way, made everything feel possible. She smiled, her chest tightening with emotion. "So what now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam took a step closer, his hand reaching out to gently touch her cheek. "Now we take a chance. We figure out what this is between us, together. No more pretending, no more holding back." Emma nodded, feeling the weight of his words sink in. She had always been afraid of taking chances, of stepping into the unknown, but with Liam, it felt different. She trusted him, and for the first time in her life, she was willing to take a leap of faith. "I'm scared," Emma admitted, her voice trembling. "I've never done anything like this before." "I know," Liam said, his voice gentle. "But sometimes, the scariest things are the ones worth doing. We don't have to have all the answers right now. We just have to take it one step at a time." Emma smiled, her fear melting away in the warmth of his words. She had never felt so sure of anything in her life. For the first time, she was ready to take that step. The next few months flew by in a blur of excitement, uncertainty, and growth. Emma's art studio flourished, and she began to gain recognition for her work. Liam was there every step of the way, supporting her in ways she never imagined. But as their relationship deepened, Emma still had one question that lingered in the back of her mind. Could she trust that this, what they had, was real? One evening, as they sat on the rooftop of the building where her studio was located, looking out over the city, Emma turned to Liam. "Do you ever think about the future?" she asked quietly, her eyes meeting his. Liam smiled, his gaze softening. "Every day," he said. "I think about it with you in it." Emma felt her heart swell at his words. She had never felt so sure of anything before. "What do you want for the future?" she asked, her voice full of hope. Liam took her hand in his fingers gently tracing her palm. "I want us to be a part of each other's lives. I want us to keep growing, to keep supporting each other, and to build something together. Not just with the studio, but with everything." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of happiness, of hope. "I want that too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam leaned in, his lips brushing against her forehead. "Then that's what we'll do," he said softly. Emma smiled, her heart full. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. With Liam by her side, she was ready to face it. Together. As the months went by, Emma's art studio became a thriving hub for creativity. She was getting the recognition she had always dreamed of, and with each new painting, she felt closer to the person she had always wanted to be. Liam remained a constant presence in her life, offering support in ways she never thought possible. He was there for every milestone, every success, and every moment of doubt. Their connection grew stronger with each passing day. But as they navigated their growing relationship, Emma couldn't help but wonder about Liam's past. They had spoken about their lives, but she realized there were parts of his story he had yet to share. One evening, after a long day of painting, Emma and Liam were sitting in the studio, the only light coming from the dim desk lamp beside them. Emma was working on a new canvas, her brushes moving with practiced ease, when she looked up to see Liam staring out the window. There was a quiet tension in the air. Emma set her brush down, deciding it was time to ask. Liam, I've been meaning to ask you something, she said, her voice soft but steady. You've been so supportive of me, but I feel like there's still so much I don't know about you. What about your past? You've told me a lot about your business, your work, but what about you? What were you like before all this? Liam's eyes met hers, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. He was quiet for a moment, and Emma could tell that he was choosing his words carefully. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but sincere. I've had my share of struggles, Emma. My family wasn't exactly easy. I spent a lot of time chasing success, building this empire, because I thought that would give me the happiness I was missing. But the truth is, I never really allowed myself to stop and think about what I wanted. I got so caught up in proving myself, in making sure I was always ahead, that I forgot how to live for myself. Emma listened intently, feeling a deep empathy for him. She knew what it was like to fight for something, to give everything you have to a dream. But she also knew how easy it was to lose yourself along the way. So what changed? She asked, her voice gentle. Liam smiled, but it was bittersweet. Meeting you changed me, Emma, he said, his gaze softening as he looked at her. I never thought I'd find someone who would make me question everything I've worked for. You made me realize that there's more to life than just building an empire. There's something real here, with you, that I never expected. Emma felt a wave of warmth wash over her. She had known that their connection was special, but hearing him say it out loud made everything feel even more real. I'm glad we met, she said softly, her voice full of emotion. Liam took her hand in his touch warm and reassuring. I'm glad too, he said, his voice steady. And I'm not going anywhere. I want to build something with you, Emma. Not just the studio, but a life. Together. Emma's heart swelled at his words. She had always been afraid of taking risks, of opening herself up to someone else. But with Liam, she felt safe. She felt like she could finally let go of the fear that had held her back for so long. As the night wore on, they sat together in silence, the weight of their conversation hanging in the air, but neither of them felt the need to say anything else. It was enough to just be in that moment, together. But as much as Emma wanted to focus on the future, there was one last hurdle she had to face. The opening of her art gallery was fast approaching, and with it came the pressure to prove herself to the world. She had worked so hard to get to this point, but now, as the date drew near, the doubt crept in again. What if no one liked her work? What if it all fell apart? I'm nervous, Emma admitted, breaking the silence. Liam turned to her, his expression filled with understanding. It's normal to feel that way, he said, his voice calm. But you've already done the hard part. You've created something beautiful. You've already proven to yourself that you can do this. The rest is just the world catching up to you. Emma smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. With Liam by her side, she felt ready to take on whatever came next. The opening night arrived, and with it came the anticipation Emma had been holding in for so long. As she stood at the front of her gallery, surrounded by her work and the people who had supported her along the way, she realized that this was just the beginning. She had stepped into a new chapter of her life, one filled with possibility, love, and a future she had never dared to dream of. And as she glanced over at Liam, standing beside her, she knew that whatever happened, they would face it together. The night of the gallery opening arrived, and Emma was a bundle of nerves. The gallery was filled with people, artists, potential buyers, friends, and a few curious strangers. Liam stood by her side, ever the steady presence in the whirlwind of her emotions. He could see how important this night was for her. She had worked tirelessly, creating not just art, but a new chapter of her life. And now, as she looked around at the crowd, the doubt that had been gnawing at her for weeks crept in again. What if they didn't like her work? What if no one cared? She couldn't help but feel small in the sea of well-dressed, successful people surrounding her. She glanced at Liam, who was watching her intently, as if reading her thoughts. He smiled at her, his eyes full of warmth and encouragement. You've already done the hard part, he said softly. This is just the beginning. Trust yourself, Emma. They're here because they want to see what you've created. Emma nodded, taking a deep breath. She tried to steady her nerves, but the feeling of vulnerability was overwhelming. As the evening wore on, people came and went, admiring the artwork, talking amongst themselves, and asking her questions about her creative process. Each compliment Each nod of approval made her feel a little lighter. She was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, she had a place in this world after all. Liam was right. The hard part was over. She had made it. But just as she was starting to feel a sense of relief, a familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. "Emma," a voice called out. She turned to see a tall, well-dressed man approaching her. It was Alex, an old acquaintance from her past. He had been one of the people who had once doubted her, who had laughed at her dreams. She smiled politely, though a part of her felt a wave of unease wash over her. "Alex," she said, trying to keep her composure. "It's been a while." "It sure has," Alex said with a smirk, his eyes scanning the gallery. "I didn't expect to see you here. You've done well for yourself, haven't you?" His tone was dripping with condescension, and Emma felt the familiar sting of insecurity. "I'm glad you could make it," she said, forcing a smile. "It's been a lot of work, but it's worth it." Alex nodded, his gaze flickering over her artwork. "I have to admit, I didn't think you had it in you," he said, his voice low, as if trying to get under her skin. "But I'll give you credit. This is impressive." Emma's heart sank for a moment, but she quickly composed herself. She had come too far to let his words affect her now. She had worked too hard. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady. "I appreciate the feedback." Alex's smile faded, and he nodded before walking away, leaving Emma standing there, her confidence shaken but not broken. She took a deep breath and turned to Liam, who had been watching the interaction from a distance. He could see the change in her posture, the way her shoulders had slumped slightly. He stepped up to her, offering his support. "Don't let him get to you," Liam said, his voice calm and reassuring. "You've already proven so much. This night is yours, Emma." She looked at him, the warmth of his words sinking in. He was right. She had already achieved something she never thought possible. This gallery, this night, was hers. And nothing Alex or anyone else said could take that away from her. The night continued, and as the hours passed, Emma found herself surrounded by people who truly appreciated her work. She sold a few pieces, exchanged contact information with some potential buyers, and even made a few new friends. Liam stayed by her side the entire time, his presence a constant reminder that she was not alone in this journey. When the evening finally came to an end, Emma felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had done it. She had faced her fears, stood her ground, and shared a piece of her soul with the world. And the world had responded with kindness and respect. As she and Liam walked out of the gallery, the cool night air hit her, and she smiled to herself. "You were right," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "This is just the beginning." Liam smiled back at her, his eyes full of pride. "I told you. You were ready for this." As they walked down the street, side by side, Emma felt a sense of peace wash over her. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. And with Liam by her side, she knew the future was full of endless possibilities. Months passed, and Emma continued to pour her heart into her art studio. The success of her gallery opening had set the tone for her future, and with each passing day, she felt more confident in her abilities. Her work was being appreciated, her name was slowly becoming known, and people were beginning to take her seriously. But there was still one thing she hadn't fully faced, the fear that had been gnawing at her for as long as she could remember. The fear of not being enough. Every time she completed a painting, every time she sold a piece of her work, she felt proud. But deep down, there was always a whisper telling her that it wasn't enough. It wasn't just about the art. It was about proving to herself that she could truly make something of herself. Liam had been her rock through all of this. His constant support, his belief in her, kept her grounded. He was with her every step of the way, encouraging her to push beyond her limits. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she was living in his shadow. He had always been so certain of himself, so sure of what he wanted. She, on the other hand, still wasn't entirely sure of who she was outside of her art. One evening, as they sat in the cozy living room of her studio apartment, Emma looked at Liam, who was sitting across from her, his eyes soft and understanding. "Liam," she began, her voice quieter than usual, "do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" He looked at her with curiosity, his brow furrowing slightly. "What do you mean?" I feel like I'm always trying to prove something. Prove that I can make it, that I can be successful, that I'm worthy of everything that's happening. But I don't know who I am when I'm not working, when I'm not painting," Emma explained, her voice trembling with vulnerability. Liam's gaze softened, and he leaned forward, his hands resting on his knees. "Emma, you don't have to prove anything to anyone, least of all to yourself," he said gently. "I've watched you grow. I've seen how far you've come. You've already made something incredible. You're not living in anyone's shadow. You're making your own path." Emma bit her lip, the weight of his words settling in. But still, the doubt lingered. "I don't know. I don't feel like I'm enough, even though everything seems to be going well. What if it's all just luck?" Liam smiled softly, standing up and walking toward her. He sat down beside her on the couch, his presence comforting. "Emma, nothing about this has been luck. Everything you've achieved is because of you, your hard work, your dedication, and your talent. I know it's hard, but you need to believe that. You've already proven you're more than enough." She leaned into him, the warmth of his embrace helping to quiet the storm inside her. For the first time in months, Emma felt like she was allowed to let go of the pressure she had been carrying. She didn't have to be perfect. She didn't have to have it all figured out. She could just be. Over the next few weeks, Emma's studio continued to flourish. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly falling into place, and she started to feel more at home in her own skin. She learned to embrace the uncertainty, the fact that the future was unknown, and that was okay. She was living her truth, and that was all that mattered. Then, one night, after a long day of work, Liam surprised her with a simple, yet meaningful gesture. He had arranged a dinner at a small, intimate restaurant, one that wasn't filled with fancy decor or loud chatter. Just the two of them, sharing a quiet moment away from everything. As they sat across from each other, enjoying the meal and each other's company, Liam reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "Emma," he said, his voice steady, "I know you've been carrying a lot of weight, and I want you to know that I'm here with you, no matter what. I'm not going anywhere. You've got me, and I believe in you. I always have." Tears welled in Emma's eyes as she squeezed his hand, overwhelmed by the depth of his words. She had never felt so seen, so understood. In that moment, she realized that everything she had feared, the doubts, the insecurities, had been keeping her from fully embracing the love and support she had been given. But now, she was ready. Ready to embrace not just the future, but also the love that came with it. With Liam by her side, Emma knew she could face whatever came next. And as the night went on, and the restaurant emptied, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. She was no longer just chasing success. She was building a life she was proud of, and one she knew she deserved. Months had passed since that quiet dinner, and Emma's life had changed in ways she never imagined. The studio was thriving, her paintings now hanging in galleries across the city, and her name was becoming more and more recognized in the art world. But it wasn't just her career that had flourished, it was her life, her heart. With Liam by her side, she had found not only the strength to succeed, but the courage to love without fear. She had come a long way from the insecure waitress who once doubted her worth. Now, as she looked at the life she had built, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. Emma stood in her studio one late afternoon, gazing out the window at the golden light that filled the space. The work on her easel was almost done, and she couldn't help but smile as she brushed a final stroke onto the canvas. It had taken time, patience, and a lot of hard work, but this painting, like everything else, felt like a reflection of the person she had become. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts, and she turned to see Liam standing in the doorway, his smile warm and full of love. "Hey you," he said softly, his eyes scanning the studio before landing on her. "Hey," Emma replied, her voice full of affection. "What's up? I just wanted to check in on you," Liam said, stepping inside and walking toward her. "You look deep in thought." "I'm just finishing up this piece," she said, motioning to the painting on the easel. "It's been a journey, but I think it's finally coming together." Liam walked over to her, his gaze falling on the painting. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice full of admiration. "You've come so far, Emma. I'm proud of you." Emma smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said softly, her voice thick with gratitude. Liam reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands, his touch tender. "You did all the work, Emma. I was just here to support you, to remind you of the incredible person you are. I've never met anyone like you." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes as she looked at him, feeling a wave of emotion wash over her. I don't know where I'd be without you, she whispered. You've helped me find myself again. Liam smiled, wiping away the tear that had escaped down her cheek. And you've helped me too, he said. Before I met you, I was just going through the motions. But you've shown me what really matters. You've shown me that there's more to life than just success and business. There's love, there's art, and there's you. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Liam, she said, her voice barely a whisper, I love you. Liam's eyes softened, and he leaned down, pressing his forehead gently to hers. I love you too, he said, his voice filled with sincerity. More than you'll ever know. For a moment, they stood there in silence, the weight of their words hanging in the air. It wasn't just the love they shared. It was the understanding, the support, and the trust they had built together. In that moment, Emma knew that she had found her home, not just in her art, but in Liam, in the life they had created together. Later that evening, as the sun set and the city lights twinkled outside, Liam took Emma's hand and led her to the rooftop of her studio. They stood there in the cool night air, looking out over the city. The world was theirs, full of possibilities and dreams waiting to be realized. Emma leaned against Liam, feeling his arm wrap around her, and closed her eyes, letting the peaceful silence envelop them. This is just the beginning, Liam whispered in her ear. Emma smiled softly, knowing in her heart that everything was exactly as it should be. They had both come so far, and together, they were ready to face whatever came next. With love, with art, and with each other, Emma knew that she could conquer anything. And that, more than anything, was the greatest masterpiece of all.